Week 10 of Big Brother 27 has come and gone, and I think this season is starting to hit its stride again. Yes, we aren't hitting as high of highs as we did in the past, but we're certainly not at rock bottom like we were last week, so that's definitely a plus. There was a lot of interesting game talk, some drama and controversy, and an actually genuinely exciting double eviction that I thoroughly enjoyed. But how did it all break down? Well, that's why I'm here. In this video, I'm going to be recapping the events of Week 10 of Big Brother 27, including the double eviction, and giving my updated power rankings. And I do apologize if I do sound a bit nasally. I am a little bit under the weather, first semester sickness and all, but I'm still going to try my best. So with all that preamble out of the way, it is the one and only RJ21 here, and let's get into the Big Brother 27 Week 10 recap and power ranking. Week 10 starts off with Zingbot making his return, and you can tell how much production likes or doesn't like the cast based on how bad of burns Zingbot zings are. And based on the zings this season, I think it's pretty fair to assume that production doesn't have a lot of love left for this cast. I mean, Ashley and Lauren got songs for their zings. Ava got told that her fashion sucks, and Keanu got told that he stinks. But the person who got it the worst was definitely Morgan. She was essentially called a homewrecker, and she was called out for her really cheap man's vibes, even though it is technically both Morgan and Vince, so I don't know why Vince isn't getting any of the blame for it as well, but that's besides the point. Morgan's zing is really bad. It's definitely the worst one this season and probably in recent history. And the vibe in the house is so awkward. You could literally try and cut the tension with a knife and the knife would break. Everybody is just like, this is so uncomfy. I don't want to be here. And then there's just Morgan coping in the corner talking about how I would obviously respect Vince's relationship. I would never step across that boundary. I would never do that. I would never hold his hand or rub his back, even though she does that. But it's just Morgan coping a lot, and the whole vibe of the house is just so uncomfortable. But as a viewer, I absolutely loved it. We then get to the HOH competition, which this week is called The Last Zing, which is basically a true crime documentary about the sudden death of Zingbot. But in all honesty, it's just a true or false quiz comp. Get the answer right and you earn a point, but get the answer wrong and you don't earn a point. The HouseGuest with the most points by the end of the competition will win and become the new head of household. And with this competition, the questions were super difficult. In comparison to the average quiz comp, this quiz comp's questions were definitely an escalation in difficulty. But by the end of it, we actually go to a tiebreaker between Kelley and Vince. But because Kelley is bad at math, Vince ends up winning, becoming the new head of household, winning his third HOH of the season. After the HOH competition, we see a conversation between Keanu and Vince, where Keanu, in his mind, thinks that he's safe and that there's no way that he would ever go up on the block because him and Vince are super close after his HOH. But Vince knows about some of the comments that Keanu has been making about his relationship with Morgan and how he's saying that they're cheating island instead of Big Brother. And that really rubbed Vince the wrong way. And because of that whole debacle, Vince doesn't really trust Keanu and is considering putting him on the block as a third nominee because his first two are pretty already set in stone, with him not being super close with either Ava or Kelley. And this makes Keanu really upset because he really thought that the two of them had something. But after this conversation, Keanu isn't feeling as confident. We then get the first of many Morgan and Vince conversations where Morgan is pitching that Vince should put Lauren up on the block. Because at this point in the game, Lauren has never touched the block. And if Lauren doesn't touch the block this week, she will have gone 10 weeks without ever getting nominated. And in a season where 3 people get nominated every single week, that is such an impressive statistic, and Morgan doesn't want Lauren to have that whatsoever, or else Lauren is going to easily win this game if she makes it to Final 2. So Morgan is hardcore pitching for Vince to put Lauren up on the block, but Vince obviously doesn't want to do that because Lauren is somebody who is very close to Vince, and Vince considers Lauren to be a Final 2. So Vince is obviously pushing back on this idea, and this just makes Morgan that much more upset. And this upsetness is definitely going to manifest itself later on in the week. Finally, we have a conversation between Lauren and Vince where Vince essentially rats out Morgan. Vince alludes to the fact that Morgan wants Lauren up on the block, and Lauren practically laughs at this idea, considering the fact that, Lauren and Vince have a Final 2, and they've been working so closely with each other throughout a majority of this game, except for a couple critical weeks. But that's besides the point. They have a really close bond and are practically Final 2s with each other, so it would be stupid for Vince to put Lauren up. So At the nomination ceremony, Vince chooses to nominate Ava, Kelley, and Keanu, with either Ava or Kelley being the target. After the nomination ceremony, we see Morgan and Vince having a conversation where Morgan is expressing her frustrations with Vince. Morgan is essentially telling Vince that, well, if you're not going to put Lauren up on the block, then I guess you've lost me, and I guess we really aren't ride or dies as we thought. And it's practically forcing Vince's hand into putting Lauren up as the replacement nominee if the veto were to get used. So this incentivizes Vince to not have the veto used at all, considering he doesn't want to put Lauren up, but Morgan is essentially forcing his hand into doing that. We then pick players for the power veto competition where the HOH and Vince, the three nominees in Ava, Keanu, and Kelley, and Morgan and Lauren, who are selected by random draw, are going to compete in the veto. And this week's veto is called BBCSI, which is basically the seesaw competition. Basically, these house guests have to put these balls into their ending platform and balance it so the balls do not fall off of that ending platform. Whichever house guest can get all 25 of their balls onto that ending platform and hit their buzzer without any of them falling off will win the golden power veto. And there was a really big crisscross throughout this entire competition. Keanu was in the lead at one point, and then Lauren was in the lead at one point. But by the end of it, they both dropped and they were out of the competition when the eventual winner was crowned. And so by the end of the competition, Morgan comes out on top and wins the golden power veto, winning her third power veto in a row after she was called a comp flop for basically this entire season. But now she's proven all of them wrong by winning all of these veto competitions. After the veto competition, Keanu and Morgan are having a conversation where Keanu is basically telling Morgan that she should use the veto to save him, considering that if Vince does promise to put Lauren up on the block and Morgan uses the power veto to save Keanu, they're guaranteeing that one of either Ava, Kelley, or Lauren, three people who have recently formed a trio, would be going home, taking away a number from that side of the house. However, Keanu is absolutely delusional about his relationship with Morgan, as, let's be honest, even though that it would be the most entertaining decision by far, it was never a realistic possibility that Morgan was ever going to use the veto to save Keanu. We then see Ava and Morgan having a conversation where Ava is pitching for the veto to be used on her. Mind you, it's being pitched in an Ava sort of way where she's like, you know what, do whatever's best for your game. I'm not really going to press you, which is like, why are you not campaigning harder for her to use the veto on her? It doesn't make sense. And initially, Morgan wasn't going to use the veto on Ava, was actually going to use it on Keanu. But even though this isn't included in the episode, Ashley goes to work in ensuring that Morgan would use the power veto to save Ava. And this is what sways Morgan to using the power veto on Ava eventually. We then see a conversation between Vince and Morgan where Morgan is going to work. She is spending countless hours, days, and nights in Vince's HOH room to eventually wear Vince down to the point where he concedes and puts Lauren up on the block, or at least agrees to it. And Morgan is doing constant campaigning every single day with some sort of new argument about why Lauren is a threat or why Lauren needs to go out on the block. And eventually, Morgan just flat out says that if you don't put Lauren up on the block, I guess we're not close allies anymore, reiterating that that would be a bad move in losing Morgan, but it would also push away all of Vince's jury votes, and it would essentially lose him the game, which forces Vince to concede. So at the veto meeting, Morgan uses the power veto to save Ava, and Vince nominates Lauren as the replacement nominee, leaving Keanu, Kelley, and Lauren as the final nominees going into the blockbuster. After the veto ceremony, Lauren is so saddened by this fact. I mean, Lauren and Vince have had a final two for practically this entire game, and for Vince to be the person who puts Lauren up on the block for the first time is absolutely devastating, and it definitely negatively taints the relationship from this point moving forward, to where Lauren has been nothing but undyingly loyal to Vince, and for Vince to put Lauren up on the block as if it's nothing, even though it definitely is something, it just hurts Lauren, and their relationship is really never the same after this. We then see Ashley putting in the work and getting the gears turning to flip the vote onto Lauren. Even though Vince wants Lauren to stay and Morgan does oblige to this, Ashley obviously doesn't want Lauren to stay, considering that Lauren is probably Ashley's biggest threat in consideration of all the people on the other side of the house. So Ashley is going to work flipping votes, like Kelley of all people, to vote out Lauren if the opportunity presents itself. And Ashley is doing really, really effective work. I mean, flipping Kelley's vote is one thing, but flipping Morgan's vote is an entire other thing. And Morgan is genuinely considering going back to her initial intentions of wanting to get Lauren out, even if it does go against what Vince wants. We then get what is probably the biggest fight between Morgan and Vince throughout the entire season. A lot of people thought that this was going to be their breakup, including me, but for some reason they're still with each other in terms of alliances and working together. but Vince is just complaining about the fact that Morgan essentially forced his hand into putting Lauren up. But Morgan is denying this, saying that I didn't force you to do anything. You were able to make your own choice. And it is a little bit hypocritical coming from Morgan, considering the fact that Morgan was playing a bit selfishly, but now she's acting as if she did nothing, even though she definitely did something. But that's besides the point. Both Vince and Morgan are in the wrong in this, in my opinion, because they're both looking at this from a very selfish perspective, which in the game of Big Brother obviously makes sense. But the fact that they're both framing it to each other, that they are looking out for each other, even though they're not, it's just such a hypocritical and infuriating conversation. But it was definitely peak entertainment with like Vince slamming the wall and closing it off and Morgan being like, did you close the wall because you don't want to have this conversation, Vince? Is that what it is? Do you just not want to talk about this anymore? Like, it is such peak drama. We then get to the final BB blockbuster of the entire season. And instead of this blockbuster being hosted by Julie, it's actually being hosted by the Mastermind. And with the Mastermind having control over this final blockbuster, he obviously is going to cleverly name it. And this competition is called Steel Power Orbs for the Mastermind, so he can bring his lair back online. I know, right? Such a clever name. In all honesty, it actually did make me laugh, and I actually found it really funny, but that's besides the point. This competition is basically the big drop top competition that we've seen previously in competitions like the double eviction on Big Brother 25. Basically, the houseguests have to dive into these ball pits and find their corresponding color. Then, once they find their ball, they have to try and drop it into a tube. The first houseguest to land 4 balls into their tube and hit their buzzer will win the BB blockbuster. And this competition wasn't even close. Like, even though Kelley and Keanu are 2 of the strongest competitors in the house, if it was just them 2 competing, we would not see the end of this competition. They were genuinely that bad at it. So, as a result, Lauren ends up coming up on top and wins the blockbuster, earning her safety, leaving Keanu and Kelley as the final nominees. This vote is actually super interesting, as we're seeing people with a bunch of different and conflicting agendas now having to butt heads. And so come the live vote, we get the first ever tie vote since the final 5 of Big Brother 24. That's like 3 years ago. So the fact that it's taken this long is kind of insane. But it does create some really entertaining moments in the fact that Vince, this person who has always been so apologetic about it and doesn't want to own any of his decisions, now has to make probably the most critical decision in front of the entire house. And by Vince's tie-breaking vote, Kelley is the 11th houseguest to be evicted from the Big Brother house and the 3rd member of the jury.
Are you closing the door on my face? Or do you not want to have this conversation? Is that why the door's closed?
However, the night isn't done yet, as the Mastermind comes back on the screen and announces that his month of mayhem is still going on, and tonight it's going to be a double eviction. Unfortunately, not a triple eviction like I wanted, but still, it's a speed eviction and it is going to be a double eviction. The double eviction HOH competition is called Wretched Reactor, and it's basically the upload-download competition we saw in the Week 4 BBAI arena of Big Brother 26. Basically, the houseguests have to roll these balls up a ramp and land it at the peak. Whichever houseguest can roll all of these balls and land 5 of them and hit their buzzer will win the double eviction HOH. And it was honestly super close. Like, Ashley was able to get an early lead, but Morgan was right there with her. And then Keanu was slowly catching up. But by the end of it, Morgan comes out on top and wins the head of household and wins her first HOH of the entire season. An honestly really impressive comp run. At the nomination ceremony, Morgan makes the obvious choice and nominates Keanu and Lauren, with Lauren as the initial target. Because this is the final 6, everybody gets to compete in the power of veto, and this competition is called Master Find. Basically, the houseguests are going to be presented with a screen with 3 different segments, and the houseguests have to find which segment the mastermind is in. If you get the answer right, you get a point. Whichever houseguest has the most points by the end of the competition will win the Golden Power Veto. And this one is close. Like, everybody was locked in, everybody was dialed in, but by the end of it, we actually go to a tiebreaker between Keanu and Morgan. And for some reason, neither of them have any sort of conception of what time is. Keanu underestimated how long the wall comp was, while Morgan just can't do math. But by the end of it, Keanu wins and comes out on top and wins the Golden Power Veto with an absolutely over-the-top celebration. Like, genuinely, when I first saw it, it made me laugh so hard because it was so over the top, and it might be one of my favorite reactions to winning a competition of all time. At the veto ceremony, Keanu obviously chooses to use the power veto to save himself, and Morgan nominates Ava as the replacement nominee, simply as a pawn to ensure that Lauren goes home. Ultimately, come the live vote in eviction, by a vote of 2-1, Lauren is the 12th house guest to be evicted from the Big Brother house and becomes the 4th member of the jury.
Congratulations, Keanu. You have won the Golden Hour of Veto.
Now it's time to get into the power rankings. At number 7, the first house guest evicted this week, we have Kelley. And this was basically a long time coming. It was practically an inevitability at this point. I mean, let's be honest. Were anybody ever actually thinking that Kelley was going to make it to the final 2? Me personally, I never thought that that was a realistic possibility, considering the fact that, come on, it's Kelley. Like, there's no way it's going to happen. Now, with that being said, there was actually a shocking amount of jury win equity with Kelley. Because Kelley was such a fierce competitor and because she was able to defy all of these odds, if Kelley were to make it to the final 2, people, at least within the house, really thought that Kelley could win this game based off of respect and the fact that she was fighting so hard, which would have been such a disastrous conclusion to this season. Like, imagine the season winner representing the entire season of Big Brother 27, and that house guest is Kelley. You know, realize how much of a mess that is? That's so bad. But luckily, it's not, as Kelley was evicted. And let's be honest, Kelley did not play that good of a game this season. It probably is one of the worst games of pretty much considering that how far Kelley made it into the season. I mean, she got 7th place on a 17-person cast. With how badly she played, that just doesn't make sense. But somehow that's reality. I mean, Kelley had such a lackadaisical and lackluster social game. She really didn't try to do anything, and everything she tried to do, she ended up failing. She got blindsided by Vince multiple times, and she was just never able to gain any sort of footing. And the one time she actually does, she gets evicted. So all in all, her game is pretty much a failure, and it's just a whole mess, which is why she ends up here at number 7.
I am so close to winning my first HOH. But everyone who knows me knows that math is my weakest point.
At number 6, the second house gets evicted this week, we have Lauren. And I might be over-exaggerating when I say this, but I genuinely believe that Lauren might be one of the most inflexible and passive players we have seen in recent Big Brother history. I mean, Lauren has a good strategic mind for the game. She was able to recognize what some of her good moves were and how to enact them, except for the fact that she just wasn't willing to put in the work to actually do those moves. Like, she knew that Vince burned her multiple times, and she knew that she could have branched out and linked up with other people, but instead, Lauren continued pushing her undyingly loyalness towards Vince for some reason, and Vince just never paid her back on that favor. I mean, Vince literally put Lauren up on the block and broke her streak. Mind you, it's Morgan who ends up sending Lauren home. But still, the fact that Lauren isn't able to secure that relationship enough with Vince to the point where Vince actually does put Lauren up on the block is really bad. And the fact that Lauren doesn't fight any much harder to actually make sure that that move doesn't happen just proves how passive she has been throughout this entire season. Her first words when she got evicted were something along the lines of, I don't know. And that's basically what she did this entire season. She just ummed and uh'd and I don't know'd her way throughout the entire season. She was so indecisive in everything she did. And then she had the audacity to be like, indecisive? Who's indecisive? I'm not indecisive. I make my own moves. When she's like all the time saying, I don't know what to do, y'all. I'm just so confused. I have no idea what's going on. Like, what? Oh, it's genuinely insane. But in all honesty, Lauren is probably one of the better players on this cast, despite how passive she is. I mean, to be fair, this cast is a bit of a mess, but Lauren, in comparison to them, actually played a really stable game. So while I am personally frustrated with how passive she was, it's not the worst game in the world, but it's not enough to get her to the win, which is why she ends up here at number 6.
Every week that Vince wins HOH, I'm like, yes, Vince won HOH. Easy week. Then, bam, Catherine, my best friend, goes home. And bam, I'm a consideration to be on the block.
Now it's time to talk about the house guests that are actually still in the game. At number 5, the house guest I believe to be in the worst position is Keanu. And let's not be silly here for a second. Keanu is the biggest target in the house, and anybody who chooses not to target Keanu is an absolute fool. I mean, who is going to let Keanu make it to the final 2? Like, if Keanu makes it to that final 2, he is unbeatable. Like, yes, he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but everybody's going to have that same frame of thought of, how the hell did we let Keanu make it to the final 2? And if/when he does sit in those final 2 chairs, he's obviously going to beat basically everybody, even though on paper he played arguably one of the worst games of the entire season. Like, socially, his game has been so bad. He's had such bad and delusional reads on everything, and he thinks he's playing a much better strategic game than he actually is. Like, let's be honest, a majority of Keanu's game is just winning competitions in order to save himself. Like, the times that he actually wins competitions that put him in a position of power, he fumbles it. And it's just like he makes the wrong moves for himself. And at this point, I don't know if Keanu has any more lives left in him. Like, anybody who wins HOH should be targeting Keanu. They would be absolutely silly for not wanting to target Keanu. And unfortunately for him, I don't think it spells out that well for him. I am worried for him and the fact that he has to win either one of the HOH or the POV in order to save himself because the blockbuster is no longer in play. So it does leave Keanu in a really, really bad position to where he's essentially forced to win a competition in order to save himself. Like, yes, he does have some people who wanted to keep Keanu around initially, somebody like an Ashley, but now that we're so deep into the game, it's just too risky to keep Keanu at this point. So everybody should be targeting Keanu. And because of that, I do have Keanu here at number 5.
I don't know how it happened, but one day I woke up and realized that we voted all of the testosterone out of the house. There's tears, complaining, whining, and that's just Vince.
At number 4, I have Ava. And Ava is just a loner at this point. Like, Ava had this 3-person alliance of flower power between herself, Kelley, and Lauren, and within the span of literally one day, Ava went from a 3-person alliance to just herself. Like, the fact that both of them went home in the double eviction is actually so funny in retrospect, but it leaves Ava in a really bad position. Like, yes, Ava is not threatening because she has basically no close ties left with anybody in the house, but because she has no close ties left with anybody in the house, she is expendable to basically everybody. If Ava doesn't win HOH, she is more likely than not going up on the block as a pawn. Because who's really going to be upset that Ava's up on the block besides Ava? And Ava's obviously going to try and make it some big theatrical moment with some really fake speech. Like, that nomination speech was so weird. Like, this is why you never try and order Jimmy off of Wish or Temu, because you're going to get an Ava Pearl type of speech, which was so bad. It was so bad. But let me get back to talking about Ava's game. As of right now, Ava just is in a really lonely position. Like, yes, she does have some connective tissue with the likes of Ashley and Morgan, but it's certainly not enough to keep her safe, not by any stretch of the imagination. At this point, if Ava does get evicted, most people are not going to be crying or sobbing over eviction. They're more likely just going to be like, dang, that really sucks we couldn't get out our primary target. Oh well, and then they move on to the next week. So all in all, Ava is pretty expendable as she lost both of her close allies, and she doesn't really have a lot of runway left. She's going to probably assume pawn status for the remainder of the season until she is eventually taken out, which is why I have her here at number 4.
It's a little bit suspicious. I'll just let my face say it all.
At number 3, I have Vince, and every single time I put Vince at number 1 in these power rankings, the very next week, he wins HOH and absolutely, completely destroys that really good position he was once in and makes me look stupid. Like, Vince cannot have a good HOH to save his entire life. Like, yes, Vince is low-key getting pushed around in all these conversations, but the fact that he is so passive-aggressive about it and yet still whines about it is so bad. Like, in my opinion, it's just never really that smart to put your number 1 ally up on the block. And yes, I do say number 1 ally because even though Vince does try and portray that Morgan is his number 1 ally in the diary room, his actions portray it as if Vince actually considers Lauren as his number 1. And Vince was so reluctant to put Lauren up on the block, and it was only because Morgan was threatening Vince's jury votes to where Vince eventually obliges and puts Lauren up on the block. But in return, he ends up pissing off Lauren, and that ruins his relationship with Lauren in the process, to where now it's not even a lock for Lauren to vote for Vince if Vince were to make it to the final 2. He's just so bad at managing his relationships because he plays victim all of the time and then just cries about it, saying like, I guess just fuck my game, right? I wanted to get 6th place anyways. Like, I guess I'm just like the worst player in the world and I just can't do anything right. And it's just like, shut up, Vince. I'm just so tired of it. We've had a whole season of Vince whining and taking zero accountability for any of his actions. And it's just like, Vince, why? Nobody respects it. And if Vince does make it to the final 2, even though he has played on paper a pretty good game, it's just so bad, and his actions make him look like such a weak player in comparison to somebody like a Morgan, who is literally dog walking him around, that at this point, I don't know if Vince can win a jury vote. Positionally speaking, Vince is in a relatively good position. I mean, nobody should be targeting Vince at this point, unless there's some wonky circumstances considering like the veto and how certain comps play out. So Vince could be in a bit of a poor position in that sense. But honestly, Vince should be relatively safe as of right now. But because I do have some trepidations about how people perceive him and how his jury prospects are looking, it is looking a bit rough for him, which is why I have him here at number 3.
First of all, for the whole world, Morgan and I have a very 100% platonic friendship. Oh God. Oh my God.
At number 2, I have Morgan, and Morgan gets what Morgan wants, and she proved it this week. There is no reasonable way in which Lauren should have gone up on the block during Vince's HOH. Like, genuinely, that should not have happened. Yet the fact that Morgan was able to make that move actually go through is genuinely insane, and I have to give my 10s to Morgan in that sense. But the way in which Morgan does it definitely doesn't spell well for how some people in the jury house are going to react to it. Like, I think Rachel is absolutely going to love that move and how aggressive Morgan is playing this game and how she's really fighting for her way. But if Vince were to somehow end up on the jury, he's obviously going to complain and say that my hand was forced and I didn't even want to make that move, but Morgan forced me to. And that's not necessarily going to be the greatest look for Morgan in all things. But in terms of the game, she's absolutely running things right now. Strategically speaking, if Morgan wants something to be done, she is going to get it done, and I have to applaud her for that. She is such a goal-driven person that she's willing to do whatever it takes in order to make that thing happen, even if it comes all the way down to threatening people, which Morgan literally did to Vince. I mean, Morgan was saying, if you choose Lauren over me again, then I guess we're not working together, and you just lost the game because you lost all of these jury votes. You lost Rachel's vote, you lost Will's vote, you're going to lose Ashley's vote, and you're probably going to lose mine too, so you just lost the season. Like, the fact that Morgan is so cutthroat and ruthless in how she is essentially forcing Vince's hand, it's peak entertainment, and I'm thoroughly amused by it. But because of how aggressive and threatening of a game Morgan is playing, she is a huge threat that people do want to get out. If Keanu were to win HOH, that leaves Morgan in a really bad position, as Keanu is one of the only people left in the game that actively would take a direct shot at Morgan. Like, if somebody like an Ashley or an Ava were to win HOH, Morgan could go home, but that's only if competitions don't play out in Morgan's favor. Like, I do think Morgan is a big enough threat to where some people are going to try and get her out, but it does leave Morgan in a really, really precarious position. Like, yes, she has really close allies like the likes of Vince and Ashley that do want to keep Morgan safe, but because of the threat level of Morgan and how some people are just itching to try and get Morgan out, I am a little bit worried about her, which is why I have her here at number 2.
I just never once in my mind thought it was like that ever. Like, literally ever. And then the zing happens and I'm like, what the?
At number 1, the HouseGuest I believe to be in the best position in the house as of week 10 is Ashley. And ever since Rachel got evicted, Ashley has locked in, and she has been going to work to make sure that all of her plans go through and to make sure that she is in the best position possible. And we are now seeing the fruit of all of her efforts. I mean, first and foremost, the fact that she was able to flip the vote on Will last week was already impressive enough. But the fact that Ashley was able to put in all of these subtle manipulation tactics to get her way, it's genuinely insane. Like, the fact that Ashley at one point had flipped Kelley's vote against Lauren, like, even though it didn't make the episodes, the fact that Ashley was able to pull that off was genuinely insane. Like, Kelley, of all people, was going to vote out Lauren? Like, what? Really? And add on to that, Ashley actually convinced Morgan to go back on her word against Vince and convinced Morgan to actually go back to targeting Lauren. Even though Morgan had promised Vince that she was never going to target Lauren, at least when Vince was HOH. Like, the fact that Ashley was able to put in all of the subtle work to make these moves happen is so impressive. And now everybody in the house loves Ashley and wants to take her far. Like, pretty much everybody in the house wants to take Ashley to Final 3. Mind you, it's not necessarily for the best of reasons, considering that a lot of people view Ashley as a jury goat that can easily be taken and dragged to the Final 3 to get evicted by the final HOH. But if Ashley does make it to the final two, I am confident that Ashley is going to be able to put together a really, really good jury speech that can sway a lot of the jurors. Even though Ashley is putting on a bit of her persona in the sense that she's, oh, I have no idea what's going on, and oh, I'm a little bit like airheaded. Ashley knows exactly what's going on, and she's convincing everybody that she is their best asset. I mean, Ashley and Ava have a final two. Ashley and Morgan have a final two. Ashley was able to repair her relationship with Vince. Keanu and Ashley had a final two at some point. Like, Ashley has been building all of these relationships, and now she is in probably the best position she's ever been in this entire game, which is super impressive and super good, especially with this late into the season. So all in all, Ashley has been putting in the work to put herself in the best position possible to move forward, which is why I have her here at number 1.
I'm gonna be politician Ashley and say no comment.
Overall, this week was a really good recovery week, especially after the abomination of a week that we had last week. The whole cheat man segment between Vince and Morgan, Mince, Vorgan, whatever you want to call them, was messy. Like, oof. Like, I was feeling uncomfortable watching that whole thing go down, but I would be lying if I said that I wasn't entertained. After Rachel's eviction, this is probably the most entertaining storyline and plot point throughout this latter half of the season. And seeing how everything is having their ups and downs and how their relationship is ever changing and growing more distant. It's just so intriguing to see everything play down and how it's leaking into everybody's gameplay. And the fact that everybody has to low-key play around it. It is creating some really interesting dynamics, and I just hope that this momentum carries on into the end game. As long as there's no BS twists that change up the momentum or really make anything just come to a dead halt, I think we could finish off strong, even though we had a bit of a really, really bad speed bump with last week. But those are just my thoughts. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends if you have any of those, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.